chapter 8 called Cowboy. Omri gaped at him. That's like, he hadn't thought of this, but of course, now that he did, it was obvious. No boy who knew the secret could possibly rest until he had a little live person of his own. Patrick, it's not like you think, just something to play with. Of course not. You've explained all about it. Now just let me put. But you have to think about it first. No, stop. You can't yet. And anyway, I don't agree to you using one of mine. Omri didn't know why he was so reluctant. It wasn't that he was mean. He just knew somehow that something awful would happen if he let Patrick have his own way. But it wasn't easy to stop him. Omri had grabbed him, but he wrenched free. I've got to, he panted. I've got to. He stretched out his hand toward the pile of soldiers again. They struggled. Patrick seemed to have gone a bit crazy. Suddenly, Omri felt the rim of a tin plate under his shifting feet. He shoved Patrick out of the way, and they both stared downward. The plate had tipped. The fire slipped off onto the carpet. Little Bear, with a yell, had leaped clear and was now waving his arms and shouting horrible things at them. His roast meat had disappeared under Omri's foot, which instinctively stamped down on the fire to put it out. He felt a squishy feeling under his shoe. Now look, we've spoiled the meat, he shouted at Patrick. If all you can do is fight, I wish I would have never brought you. Patrick looked mulish. It was your fault. You should have let me put something in the cupboard. Omri lifted his shoe. Underneath was a nasty mess of burned stuff, squashed meat, and a bent erector set. Little Bear let out a wail. You know, Great Spirit, only stupid boy. Fight, spoil good meat. You feel shame. Maybe we can rescue it. He crouched down and disentangled the meat from the mess, burning his fingers. He tried to brush it clean, but it was no use. It was all mixed up with smelly stuff of the firelighter and stuck with bits of carpet hair. I'm terribly sorry, Little Bear, he mumbled. No good sorry. Little Bear hungry, work all day, cook meat. Now what eat? I chop you down like a tree. And to Omri's horror, he saw Little Bear run to where the battle axe was lying, pick it up, and advance toward his leg, swinging it in great circles as he came. Now, did you notice that had a simile? Chop you down like a tree? Yeah, definitely a simile. And so Omri being so large, where would you start on a large person? Well, the same place you would start on a tree. Yep. Not good. Patrick fairly danced with excitement. Isn't he fantastically brave, though? Much more than David with Goliath. Omri felt the whole thing was going too far. He removed his leg from harm's way. Little Bear, calm down, he said. I have said that I am sorry. Little Bear looked at him blazing-eyed. Now, that is a metaphor telling you how he looked at him. So the look he gave him, you're comparing, well, to blazed eyes. You know, like you could. Then he rushed over to the chair Omri used as his table and began chopping wedges out of the leg of it. Oh my goodness. Stop, or I'll put you back in that cupboard. Little Bear stopped abruptly and dropped the axe. He stood with his back to them, his shoulders heaving. I'll get you something to eat right now, something delicious. Go and paint. It'll make you feel better. I will not be long. To Patrick, he said, hang on. I can smell supper cooking. I'll go get a bit of whatever is being made, and he rushed downstairs without stopping to think. Now, the author says he rushed downstairs without stopping to think. What should he be thinking about? Yep, you guessed it. Should he have left Patrick alone up there? I don't think so. His mother was dishing up a nice hot stew. Can I have a tiny bit of that, Mum? Just a little bit in a spoon. It's for a game we're playing. His mother obligingly gave him a big spoonful. Don't let it drip, she said. Does Patrick want to stay for supper? I don't know, but I'll ask, said Omri. Were you two fighting up there? I heard thumps. No, not really. It was just that he wanted to do something that Omri stopped dead, as if frozen to the ground. He might have been frozen. His face went so cold. Look at all those similes and metaphors in that sentence. Goodness. Patrick was up there with the cupboard and 2 biscuit tinfuls of little plastic figurines. Alone. Omri ran. He usually won the egg and spoon race at the school sports, which was just as well, because it was hard enough to carry an egg and a spoon running along a flat field. It's a great deal harder to carry a tablespoon of boiling hot stew and keep it steady while you rush up a flight of stairs. If most of it was still there when he got up to the top, it was more by good luck than skill, because he was hardly noticing the spoon at all. All he could think of was what might be, no, what must be happening in his room, and how much more of it would happen if he did not hurry. He burst in through the door and saw exactly what he dreaded. Patrick bent over the cupboard, just turning the key to open it. What? Omri gasped out between panting breaths, but he had no need to go on. Patrick, without turning around, opened the cupboard and reached in. Then he did turn. He was gazing into his cupped hand with eyes like huge marbles. Another simile. He slowly extended his hands toward Omri and whispered, Look! Omri, stepping forward, had just time to feel intensely glad that at least Patrick had not put a whole handful of figures in but he had only changed one. But which? He leaned over and then drew back with a gasp. It was the cowboy and his horse. The horse was in an absolute panic. It was scrambling about wildly in the cup of Patrick's hand, snorting and pawing, up one minute and down on its side the next, stirrups and reins flying. It was a beautiful horse, snow white with a long mane and tail, and the sight of it acting so frightened gave Omri heart pains. As for the cowboy, he was too busy dodging the horse's flying feet and jumping out of the way when it fell to notice much about his surroundings. He probably thought he was caught in an earthquake. Omri and Patrick watched spellbound as the little man in his plaid shirt, buckskin trousers, high-heeled leather boots, and big hat scrambled frantically up the side of Patrick's right hand and, dodging through the space between his index finger and thumb, swung himself clear of the horse, only to look down and find he was dangling over empty space. His hat came off and fell, slowly, like a leaf, down, down, down to the floor, so infinitely far below. The cowboy gave a yell and scrabbled with his feet against the back of Patrick's hand, hanging on for dear life to the ridge beside his thumbnail. Hold your hands still, Omri commanded Patrick, who in his excitement was jerking them nervously about. There was a moment of stillness. The horse stood up, trembling all over, prancing about with terror. Beside his hooves was some tiny black thing. Omri peered closer. It was a pistol. The cowboy had now recovered a little. He scrambled back through the finger gap and said something to the horse that sounded like, Whoa back, steady fella. And then he slid down and grabbed the reins, holding them just below the horse's nose. He patted its face. That seemed to calm it. Then, looking around swiftly, but not apparently noticing the enormous faces hanging over him, he reached cautiously down and picked up the pistol from between the horse's hooves. Whoa there, stand. Omri watched like a person hypnotized. He wanted to cry out to Patrick that it was a real gun, but somehow he just couldn't. He could only think that the sound of his voice would throw the horse once more into a panic, and that the horse or man would get hurt. Instead, he watched while the cowboy pointed the gun in various directions warily, and then he lowered it, Still holding the reins, he moved until he could press his hand against Patrick's skin. Then he let his eyes move upward toward the curved fingers, just level with the top of his head. "What the doggone heck?" he said. "Sure looks like a great big aw. What am I talking about? It can't be, heck, it just ain't possible." But the more he looked, the more certain he must have become that he was, indeed, in a pair of cupped hands. And finally, after scratching his gingerly head for a moment, he ventured to look right up past the fingers, and then, of course, he saw Patrick's face looking at him. There was a petrified moment when he couldn't move, and then he raised his pistol in a flash. "Patrick, shut your eyes!" Bang! Ooh, onomatopoeia. It's the first time we've had that in a while, huh? It was only a little bang, but it was a real bang, and a puff of a real gun-smelling smoke appeared. Patrick shouted with pain and surprise and would have dropped the pair if Omri hadn't thrust his hand underneath to catch them. Patrick's own hand had clapped itself to its cheek. "Ow! Ow! He shot me!" Patrick screamed. Omri was not much bothered about Patrick at the moment. He was furious with him and very anxious about this little man and his horse. Quickly, he put them down on the bed, saying, like the cowboy himself, "Steady, whoa, I won't hurt you. It's okay." "Ow!" Patrick kept yelling. "It hurts! Ow!" "See, it serves you right. I warned you," Omri said, and then he felt sorry and said, "Let's have a look." Gingerly, Patrick took his hand down. A drop of blood had been smeared on his cheek, and by peering very close, Omri could see something very like a bee stinger embedded in his skin. Like a bee stinger? Another simile. "Hang on, I see it. I'll squeeze it out." "Ow!" A quick squeeze between his thumbnails, and the almost invisible speck of black metal, which had only just penetrated the skin, popped out. Here's a picture. He shot me!" Patrick got out again in shocked voice. "I told you my Indian stuck a knife in me," said Omri, not to be outdone. "I think we ought to just put them back. Your cowboy, I mean. Of course not my Indian." "Put him back where?" Omri explained how the cupboard could change him back to plastic again. But Patrick was not having any of that. "Oh no, I want him. He's terrific. Look at him now." Patrick feasted his eyes admiringly on the little cowboy, who, ignoring the giants, whom he clearly thought he must have imagined, was doggedly dragging his horse across Omri's quilt as if he were wading through the dunes of some infinite pale blue desert. Anybody? Yes, another figurative language. Omri reached for him determinedly, but Patrick stepped into his path. "Don't you touch him! I bought him. I changed him. He's mine." "You bought him for me. You said you didn't want him." "Well, but the cupboard is mine, and I told you not to use it." "And so what if I did anyway? It's done. He's alive now, and I am keeping him. I'll bash you right in if you try to take him. Wouldn't you bash me if I tried to take your Indian?" Omri was silent. That reminded him. Where was Little Bear? He looked around. He soon spotted him at the other side of the room, busy with his paints. Some beautiful, minute designs, showing turtles, herons, and beavers, mainly in red and yellow, had appeared on the side of the teepee that Omri had made. As Omri crouched beside him to admire them, Little Bear, without looking at him, said, "You bring food? I very soon die if not eat." Omri looked around. What had he done with that spoonful of stew? But he soon saw that he had put it down on the table without even thinking. There it sat, tilting slightly and spilling a few drops of gravy, but still steaming. He hurried to get Little Bear's, or rather, Action Man mess tent. The paper plate had got all soggy, and carefully he filled it with the hot, savory stuff. "Here you are." Little Bear stopped work, laid down his paintbrush, and sniffed eagerly. "Ah, good." He sat down cross-legged among the paint lids to eat, dipping some of yesterday's stale bread in as a spoon. Your wife cook? Ah, no, Little Bear forgot. Omri not got wife. He ate ravenously for a few moments and then said, Not want? Oh, I'm having mine downstairs in a minute, Omri said. Mean, Omri not want wife, said Little Bear, who was now in a much better mood. Oh, I'm not old enough. Little Bear looked at him for a moment. No, I see. Boy, he grinned. Big boy, but boy. He went on eating. Little Bear want, he said finally, not looking up. Another wife? Chief, need wife. Want one beautiful, good cook. He put his face into the mess tin and licked it clean, and then he looked up. With Iroquois, mother find wife for son, but Little Bear mother not here. Omri be mother and find. Omri couldn't quite see himself as Little Bear's mother, but he said, I might try. I think there were some lady Indians and Yaps, but what if I get one and make her real and then you don't like her? I like, you get. Tomorrow. Little Bear grinned at him happily, his face smeared with gravy. Patrick had come up behind him. Ooh, let's put them together and see what they do. Omri jumped up quickly. No! Why not? You idiot! Because yours has got a gun and mine's got a bow and arrow, and one of them is sure to kill the other. Patrick considered this. Well, we could just take their weapons away from them. Come on, I'm going to. And he reached toward the bed. Just at that moment, there was a sound of steps on the stairs. They froze. Then Omri swiftly moved the dressing up crate enough to hide Little Bear, and Patrick sat down on the end of the bed, making the poor cowboy, who was still toiling along over the humps in the quilt. Oh, masking the poor cowboy, sorry. Just in time, Omri's mother opened the door. The next second, she said, Patrick, that was your mom on the phone. She wants you to come home right away, and Omri, it's supper time. And then she went. Omri opened his mouth to protest, but Patrick at once said, Oh, okay. With one quick movement, he had scooped up the cowboy and horse in his left hand and thrust them into his pocket. Omri winced. He could easily imagine the horse's legs being injured by such rough treatment, not to mention the matter of fright. But Patrick was already halfway out the door. Omri jumped up and grabbed his arm. Patrick, he whispered, you must be careful. Treat them carefully. They are people. I mean, they are alive. What will you do with him? How will you hide them from your family? I won't. I'll show them to my brother anyway. He'll go out of his mind. Omri began to think he might go out of his own mind. He shook Patrick's arm. Will you think? How are you going to explain? What will happen? If you say you got him from me, I'll do worse than bash you. You'll ruin everything, and then they'll take the cupboard away. That got through to Patrick at last. He put his hand slowly back into his pocket. Listen, then. You can look after them, but remember, they are mine. If you put them back in that cupboard, I will tell everyone. I am warning you. I will. You need to bring them to school tomorrow. To school? Omri was aghast. I'm not bringing Little Bear to school. You can do what you like about Little Bear. He's yours. But the cowboy is mine, and I want him at school tomorrow. Otherwise, I will tell. Omri let go of his arm, and for a moment they looked at each other as if they were strangers. But they weren't strangers. They were friends. That counts for a lot in his life, so Omri gave in. All right, he said. I'll bring them. Now give them to me gently. And Patrick brought man and horse out of his pocket and tipped them very carefully into Omri's waiting hand. Chapter 9, Shooting Match. Won't that be an exciting chapter? Until then.